Hello and welcome. This is my presentation for Project Phase 2. We have several topics to cover here at the top, so let's go ahead and dive in. Up first is a cluster analysis using the Abilitech data. So we're going to bring that data in, and there are a lot of columns in this data set. I've tried to pick several that kind of lend themselves to natural groupings, anything related to planning to purchase a new or used vehicle. There are some columns in here relating to lifestyle choices. All right, do you go to the gym? Are you a health enthusiast? Do you eat out a lot? So there's just some natural groupings in here. And we clean up the data, and then we generate our clusters. It was determined that 2 clusters would be an appropriate size for our data set. So here we can see the count of these individuals in each cluster. It's not quite an even split, but there is a good amount in each category, so that's good. Down here, I'm utilizing those kind of natural groupings of the features that I was describing earlier. We're going to bunch these together, compare them to the clusters to see what kind of correlations we can get. And so here in the graphs, we have clusters in the first row and first column with their correlations to these other fields. We can see that planned vehicle purchases and an interest in vehicles and maintenance and vehicle parts isn't a super strong indicator of what cluster we ended up placing these individuals into. When we go down to the travel and spending area, we get a lot better correlation with the clusters that they belong to. Home life and shopping, not so much. There are a few features that stand out to me as being pretty correlated. And then same thing for lifestyle. A lot of these don't have a strong correlation, but there are several that have a very strong correlation to the cluster that they ended up in. This is just another way to visualize some of that data, some of these stronger correlations I was speaking of, gym members to health enthusiasts, strongly correlated there, and then we can see that they were clustered appropriately. There's a nice split here. Same with an outdoor enthusiast to health enthusiast. And then some of those spending habits that we discussed, rental budget, prefers non-chain hotels to maybe luxury or economy. So really what our clusters are showing us is that they categorize people by their spending habits, their budget consciousness, and some of their lifestyle choices. Not so much their interests or their income, but yeah, really more kind of lifestyle and spending habits. So now we want to look at some of the demographic data we have for these individuals and their policy data at the general. This series of charts kind of breaks down a side-by-side comparison of one cluster to the other for various features. We can see cluster 0 here on the left, a lot of low income category individuals, whereas cluster 1 is much more evenly split between high income and low income. Cluster 0 also looks to be a good bit younger than individuals in cluster 1, although all age ranges are represented in each one. There's definitely a lean towards the 20 to 40-year-olds, and then dips back up into the 60, 70-year-olds, compared to cluster 1, which is really pretty focused on middle-aged individuals. Household size is another area where they're quite different. Cluster 0, the younger crowd, not as large of a household size as some of these middle-aged individuals from cluster 1. And cluster 1 is much more likely to be married, although that doesn't dominate the cluster. But in cluster 0, we could see not very many individuals are married at all. Looking at policy data broken out by clusters is pretty interesting. We saw a lot of demographic differences between the two clusters, but here looking at total amounts paid by policy and the total claim count by policy, very similar shape, very similar amounts here. Yes, the total paid for cluster 0 is a little higher and the claim count, but there are also more individuals in that cluster, so that's kind of to be expected. So digging a little deeper, just comparing demographic data directly to policy data and just even foregoing clustering at all, we again see that demographics aren't proving to be a strong indicator of the type of policyholder that we have here. So basically what we are uncovering is that even though we have some interesting demographic differences between our clusters, which were already broken out by kind of different lifestyle decisions and spending habits, these aren't proving to be strong determinants for whether they're a good driver or a bad driver. There seems to be good drivers and bad drivers in each category, which is interesting. And it's something that we noticed in the regressions that were performed as well. Really, all kinds of drivers come from all walks of life. So it's really the type of coverage they have, the driving history of the individual, whether they have a lot of tickets or previous accidents, whatever. Bad drivers can be anywhere. Good drivers can be anywhere. The general should definitely focus their efforts on determining what type of driver the policyholder is likely to be.